Hello, everyone. Welcome to the careers panel. My name is Sam.
And my name's Travers.
We're both senior math majors at Vassar College, and we're going to be the moderators for this panel today. So we're just going to start off by introducing each of our panelists one by one and having them kind of explain how they got to where they are now and exactly what it is they do now. And then after we introduce all of our panelists, we'll move into a Q&A session. So first off, we have Alex Whitworth, who is a data scientist and applied scientist at Facebook. And so, Alex, if you're on, could you please just explain to us what path your career has taken and how you've gotten to where you are now?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Great. So, I'm Alex, as you guys mentioned, data scientist at Facebook, where I work in the ads measurement space. I graduated from undergrad with a bachelor's in economics and minors in stats and math. And then after undergrad, I worked for about 5 years in largely in consulting, and kind of in I guess I would describe those 5 years kind of as moving towards increasingly technical and increasingly statistically driven work. After 5 years, I went back to grad school. I guess I would say when I graduated undergrad, I knew that I did want to go to grad school eventually. At the time, I also knew I wanted a break. And I also knew that I also didn't know exactly what I wanted to go to grad school for. So there were a few things kind of percolating in my brain, economics, math, or statistics. Obviously, that's what I studied in undergrad. Also an MBA. So part of what I was doing in the 5 years that I was working between undergrad and grad was kind of figuring out what I was really most passionate about. So I have a master's degree in statistics from UCLA, and have been working as a data scientist in industry for the past 3 or 4 years since grad school. At Facebook, I work in, like I said, in ads measurement. And broadly speaking, what that org is doing is helping advertisers become more efficient advertisers, and also measuring the return on investment that they get from advertising both on and also off of Facebook. And a lot of my work is around kind of causal inference frameworks to help us understand what happens when advertisers start using our experimental products, our experimental ad products. Are they actually becoming more sophisticated, more efficient advertisers, as we are hoping to do with those products? And also, is Facebook getting the outcomes that we would like to see from having built these products? So I'm also working on the methodology behind our experimental products. So these are products like A/B testing, for instance, and other things of that sort. And then a third thing that I work on pretty closely is trying to understand the value of the kind of ad tech that underlies our ad system, and also our things that drive our revenue, and also things that have negative impacts to our revenue as well. So trying to get kind of a complete picture of Facebook revenue and help point the business into directions of opportunity and also to risk.
Okay, thanks for introducing yourself, Alex. I think next we have Wendy Martinez, who is director of the Mathematical Statistics Research Center, in 2019 ASA president-elect, and works at the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Hi everybody. First, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. That's always the. Let me go to full screen. Okay, there we go. So thank you very much for letting me be a part of this virtual conference. I'm just going to talk a little bit about career opportunities in the federal government. Maybe not as exciting as Facebook, but still some good opportunities. And I was also glad to hear Jennifer talk about the federal government too. So a little bit about me. I got my bachelor's degree with a double major in math and physics. And as soon as I finished that, I went right into graduate school and got my master's degree in aerospace engineering. And then I went to work for a Navy lab right from, after I got my master's degree. And I was very fortunate in that they gave me support to work on my PhD. So I was able to work on my doctorate degree while I was also working. So I got my PhD in computational sciences and informatics with an emphasis on computational statistics. So it was really at this point that I guess I could consider myself to be a statistician. So I worked for the Department of Defense for about 20 years or so. And then 6 years ago, I started working at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which was a little bit different for me. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the BLS, we're responsible for producing several key economic federal indicators. Ones you might be interested or know about is first is the monthly employment numbers and unemployment rate. And another very important one is the Consumer Price Index, which is used to determine cost of living increases in Social Security, amongst other things. So in terms of positions for statisticians in the federal government, don't limit yourself to just looking for jobs as a statistician, because given the training that you've received, you can probably qualify for many other types of jobs, and I have just some of them listed here. And as Jennifer said, there's there's options all the way from entry level, where they might require a bachelor's degree, to more advanced jobs where they would require PhDs. So you don't have to have advanced degrees to work for the federal government. So what I want to point you to is this site at the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. This has a list of the qualifications for all the different sort of job classifications that we have in the federal government. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's a couple tabs here where they have a list of the different sort of overarching groups of jobs. So like mathematics and statistics is one of them. Or else they have a list of positions by job title. And why I think this is important for you to take a look at is because you could then see what you might be interested in, and then also what's required for you to qualify for that job. And it could help guide some of your choices for what classes you take. For example, if you want to become get a job as a computer scientist, you have to have calculus, which is not always required in universities and in colleges. So take a look at that. Oh, here's just an example of what I was talking about with qualifications and degrees. To be a mathematical statistician, you don't have to have a degree in statistics. You just have to have certain classes. So in order to get a federal job, you have to apply through USA Jobs. Here's a link to the website. And so I just would suggest that you take a look at this site and see what information is there. There's a lot of good information on writing resumes and various special programs and options you have. One thing to keep in mind is to get a job with the federal government, you have to be a U.S. citizen. And there's also different special programs for recent graduates, even I think for current students. So take a look at what's there. In terms of advice I might give you, first is don't limit the length of your resume. I know the usual advice is keep it to 2 pages, but you don't really have to do that with federal resumes. In fact, as a hiring manager, in my opinion, more is better. So you should tailor your resume to kind of reflect the job for which you're applying, because when you read these job announcements, there's usually some key words or skills that's required, and you could make sure that your resume clearly states that you have those skills. Because what's important to keep in mind is that as a hiring manager, I'm not going to see your resume until it's been screened and approved by somebody in human resources. So this is a person in HR who's not a statistician. They don't know anything about math or statistics, and they're going to look at your resume and your transcript and determine whether or not you're qualified for the job. So make sure you have that clear in your resumes. Let's see. And finally, be persistent. Keep looking. It takes many job applications before you find the right one. And sometimes just getting your foot in the door and getting a federal job helps, because it makes it a little easier to move on and stay within the federal system and find other jobs. As I said, be open to different job positions. Don't just restrict yourself to statistics, and pay special attention to the qualifications and what documents are required. And hopefully these slides will be given to you. And here's my contact information if you need any help. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. And so now for our final panelist, we have Qianyi Yang, a data scientist at Lyft. So Qianyi, if you're on, if you could please just tell us how you got to where you are now and what exactly it is you do for Lyft, that would be great.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So my name is Qianyi, and I'm currently a data scientist at Lyft. I joined Lyft about 1 year ago, and my team is supporting business. So it's mostly like business analytics, and my job specifically is forecasting. So I develop forecasting models for our top company metrics in order to guide important decisions. For example, because Lyft is a very special platform, it's a two-sided platform. We've got both passengers and drivers. So it's important when we make decisions on how much money to spend, on growth, how do we balance out the supply and demand we have. So talking about my trajectory, so I graduated from Macalester College, majoring in economics and statistics. So right after that, I went into consulting, specifically economic consulting, where my job is mostly to help firms in the litigation process to develop statistics analysis, work with the top academic affiliates in order to develop reports and expert testimony to trying to help our clients during the litigation process. So while this consulting is probably more quantitative than the typical types of consulting like strategy and management, it's still the technical aspect in it is pretty limited. So during my 4 years there, I've been thinking about, okay, so I always know I wanted to go to grad school, but what type of grad school do I want to? I've been debating a long time between MBA program and just a master's in a quantitative field. So finally, I decided to go to this operations research master program in UC Berkeley. So this program is called Master of Engineering, and it's a combination of technical training as well as management leadership training. So it's more like a professional program. So I think that's suited my needs very well. So I went there. This program is pretty short. It's only 1 year. And after graduation, I kind of switched my career path from economic consulting to tech, which is the place I've wanted to go. So during this transition process, I had to learn a lot of the skills I haven't been doing in my past consulting jobs. And I need to learn more like machine learning knowledge. I need to like kind of brush up, improve my like programming skills. And I also need to learn a lot of SQL, which I've never done for my previous consulting job. And another thing that was really important in my transitioning process, I would say, it's the understanding the business itself, especially for Lyft. So whether you have a good business understanding is very critical during the interview process. Because like as part of the interview process, we give candidates a take-home assignment. And this homework problem is usually very open-ended, and it's really up to the candidate to decide what scope they want to define and what kind of metrics they want to measure and what kind of problems they think would be helpful in order to answer the end question. So that's how I get to Lyft. And yeah, so at Lyft, my job is mostly forecasting, modeling, in order to helping either our local teams as well as our FP&A partners to make the best decisions. So that's it for me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think at this point, we're going to move on to the QA section. So Alex, and if Alex is still there, and Wendy and Qianyi, if you want to turn on your webcams, you can. We're going to turn on ours. And I'm going to give you your first question. So feel free, whoever wants to answer, or you can take turns. We have a question from Erin Leatherman. She says, are careers in industry and government typically collaborative in nature, or are there many individual projects? Wendy, if you want to start, or whoever.
Okay, I'll be glad to start. I think it depends on your job, of course, but for the most part, it tends to be a mixture. I would say most of them are collaborative, but then you also usually have the opportunity to come up with your own research ideas and applications and so forth, and so you kind of have a mixture of both things.
Okay. Alex is gone, I think. Qianyi, do you have anything to say about how collaborative your projects are? Or?
Sure. So actually, between consulting and technology, I feel like consulting was more focused on collaboration. So all the work is basically, done on a team basis. Like if we receive a urgent request that, requires us to deliver something under time pressure, it's usually multiple people, tackling that problem together. I feel like when I switch to tech, there is higher emphasis on independence and ownership. So each person is responsible for one area. So whether you've made accomplishments, whether there's a big failure, you have to hold yourself accountable for that. So, there's still a fair amount of collaboration, but I would say that collaboration is more on the cross-functional, which means for me, being a data scientist, on a daily basis, I work a lot with our finance department, with our operations team. So in order to either help them with their requests or ask them to unblock me in my day-to-day jobs. So that's how the collaboration piece works in the tech space.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All great answers to a great question. Everyone watching, please feel free to continue sending us your questions, and we'll be sure to ask them right here. Our next question, though, what is one thing you wish you had done differently to better prepare yourself for the career?
Wendy, if you want to start again.
Okay, well, that's a really good question. I kind of had a non-standard way of pursuing my degree work. I didn't go right from high school, so it was a little bit different than the normal way of doing things. maybe I would do it that way. But maybe that wasn't the question. In terms of if the question had to do with maybe some kind of training, I guess I would say have more computer skills, although I think I did get quite a few of those during my schoolwork. But I think it's very important for us as statisticians, data scientists, to have, those computer skills, because, when you come up with research ideas, you need to be able to implement them and then share the code with others. So I think, having those skills can just help you. And I guess the other thing I would say is try to be interdisciplinary with your training and your background and your interests, because I think, the more you know about different areas, the better you are at being able to communicate with others, which I think is very important as a data scientist and a statistician. So I'll leave it there.
Awesome. And on to you.
Yeah, so I highly echo the last point that Wendy mentioned, the interdisciplinary. So I feel like for undergraduate degree, you have the luxury to take, classes outside of your interested area or the area you want to take career at. So when you're still at that phase, really take advantage of it. Take history, art, linguistics, whatever those classes, just to get a more liberal arts-based education, because you'll never get that opportunity again in your life. So that's basically a thing that I wish I did more when I was at Macalester College. So for the graduate school phase, that's really, when you're just diving deep into your specific area. And I would say for my Berkeley program, I think it was a little bit too short. It was only 1 year. I wish I had more time there, could spending more time with the mathematical theory and those kind of things, and also to, have more time learning about programming, because those are really handy tools in your job. I feel like, when you start a new job, people will give you time to onboard. They will expect you, to learn the most when you're doing the job itself. But of course, if you have those prior knowledge before coming in, and you'll start making contributions faster than the other people. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and just answer while we're trying to get the other audio fixed. I'll answer one of the questions from the chat box, which was, do you have to be a computer, or person said, I don't know computer science, do I have to have that to be a statistician? And I would say no. Just I think having computer skills will help you. But just, understanding how to maybe use R or Python or something like that, or, SQL was mentioned, understanding databases. So having those kinds of skills, I think is what's important.
Yeah, so similarly, so for me, I don't really have a strong quantitative background, and I don't do well at computer science. I've never taken a computer science course. So I just learned a little bit of R while at undergrad, and during consulting, I did none of those. And during the 1 year at Berkeley, I tried to catch up on my R, and I learned Python on my job. So I feel like, so that's definitely important, but that's not the most important capability. So you'll be able to learn those technical skills fairly quickly. What's hard is your soft skills, is your communication skills. When you're in a conflict, when other people don't agree with your opinion, how can you effectively persuade others? How can you efficiently push things forward? And also, being able to have a business sense, knowing how to solve problems. I think those kind of skills are definitely way harder and are also very cherished in the industry.
Yeah, I want to echo that too. We haven't really talked about soft skills too much, but that's very important. Just went through a lot of interviews the past couple of weeks trying to hire somebody, and that was a big issue that came up quite a bit with some of my colleagues. And and discussing, how things were going, which was the soft skills, the ability for the candidates to communicate, especially when someone's asking you a technical question about a talk, because we always ask our candidates to give a job talk, so sort of like a little seminar type thing. And so how somebody reacts to questions and answers them, I think, is very important. So having those skills are good too.
Oh, yeah, I think we have some more questions coming out. So the next question is, do you need to go to graduate school? Does it matter? So for me, it was really, I'm pretty traditional about this, and also because like I'm from China, and my parents have always wanted me to go back to China. And in China, there's always this opinion that if you have a graduate degree, you'll be more valued in the job place. So that's a important motivation for me to go to graduate school. But in terms of is it necessary? I don't think so. So like looking at my peer data scientists at Lyft, a lot of them just only have undergraduate degree. And oftentimes the degree they have is irrelevant to statistics or computer science or data science. A lot of them have economics, mechanical engineering, physics. So I would say, yeah, again, it's really up to you. If you want to go into this field, then do some side projects, and even within your own field, try to, do things or learn things that would benefit you from a data science perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really depends on what you want to do. And my advice about whether you get an advanced degree, make sure it's what you really, really want, especially getting a PhD. Somebody recently told me that, don't get a PhD unless it makes your heart sing, unless you feel like deep down inside that that's what you have to do or want to do, because it's a big commitment. But yeah, and I think Jennifer maybe mentioned this in her talk, but that depending in the federal government, what level of job you want, and maybe the particular job, say some perhaps at the food and the FDA, they might require a PhD. So it just depends. But I don't think it's certainly required to do great things. So just is what you feel driven to do.
Yeah, so the job market definitely doesn't have this hard requirement for the degrees, unless you are applying for a very research-focused job. So at Lyft, we have data science as well as research scientists. So for research scientists, either it requires a PhD degree, or you have to have a few years of experience, like specializing in those like research or applied science. Yeah. Other than that, it's not required.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, the next question is the benefits of working in government. That question, Wendy, you can probably help.
I can answer that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, on the opm.gov site, there's a list of all the benefits. So I meant to mention that. So that's a really good resource. But they have specific sort of what they're called GS level, or the general schedule, I think. But anyway, they're sort of set salary levels, and you can kind of progress through them. I think there's even some, don't quote me on this, sort of special pay scales for mathematical statisticians. So you might check that out. But some of the usual benefits are you get annual leave, you get sick leave, and as you stay in the government, you get more annual leave, and that's, I think, pretty pretty generous, I think. There's also retirement, sort of like a retirement fund that the government puts a share in, and you could do that too, and then the government matches it. I also think that the federal health benefits are pretty good. So the most of, well, I don't know, it's maybe depends on how much the premium is, but maybe it's like 75%. Again, don't quote me. Of the premium is paid by the government, and then there's also life insurance. Where I work in the DC area, we also have a transit subsidy, so they help pay for. So we get money to help pay for taking public transportation to get to work. So that's pretty nice. Also, I think in the government they have the option to telework, not full time, but maybe 1 day a week. Depends on the agency. There's also, I think, at least where at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have a lot of opportunities to continue to go to school, to get, go to seminars, conferences, publish in proceedings or journals. So a lot of good opportunities, I think, to keep growing in your career and your development. They also have, most of them have a lot of several options for work-life balance, so you could have flex hours and different kinds of schedules like that. So it's a pretty great place to work. I've been certainly in the government for many, many years, so I do recommend it.
All right, great, thank you. Our apologies to everyone for our technical difficulties. Thank you for soldiering on in our absence. The next question we have for you is, how easy or difficult is it to change positions or change kind of directions, areas of interest in your career over the course of that career?
I would say it's not too hard as long as the two fields are kind of intercorrelated to each other. I mean, for me, I've had a relatively short career history. So from economic consulting to tech, yeah, it's definitely harder than I thought. So I remember when I was doing those interviews, I always fail at SQL questions. And basically most of the companies, they will have a pre-screen where they require you to use CoderPad software that you write real-time codes, and they will look at your codes and to evaluate if you're strong enough. Like back then, I didn't write a lot of those lines, so I failed a lot of those interviews. And Lyft, on the other hand, during the phone interview, they asked me business case questions. So like, how would I solve a problem? And then they asked very simple SQL questions just to see if I get the logic right. And I passed that interview. And then after I started my job, I find out really it's not hard to learn those like job specific skill sets. So I definitely think, there's some work you need to do, but the career mobility is relatively easy as long as the two areas are not too far away from each other.
Yeah, I think changing your career depends somewhat on your family situation, because you always have to keep that in mind. But I think, so just in my case, I did have not a huge career shift, but when I came to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I didn't know about how to handle complex, data from a complex sample design. I was used to, being in sort of the simple random sample world, which was the Department of Defense. And so then in order to get the job, I had to go back to school. So here, not young, and then I'm going back to school, taking graduate classes, which was rather challenging because I was, working full time. I still had some time at work to do my homework, but it was, kind of going back to school after being out for 20 years was very challenging, but certainly doable. And I think as a statistician, if you have, it gives you, I think, sort of a solid foundation or a broad background, and gives you the skills to maybe branch out in different areas. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, and I would also add that during this career transition phase, definitely reach out to people. So I feel like, either the alumni or people on LinkedIn, my friends, I've been talking to a lot of them, try to get their, what their experience is, what the industry outlook is like, because tech was so new to me. I know nothing about it. Just by talking to those people, they will give me some like insider knowledge. And also during this process, I would know if that would really be a good fit for me or not. So definitely reach out to people, do your homework. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for the great answers, guys. We have another question. What software skills are the most vital to getting careers and as students internships?
I guess in my opinion, I think if you had a knowledge of databases, that's just in general, I think that's a good thing to have, but also knowing R, Python, and I guess just understanding sort of the philosophy of computer programming, knowing how to write codes and what are functions and that type of thing, which I think if you know R or Python, you would get that too. I suppose as statisticians, some people might know SAS, but and some government agencies do use SAS or SAS shop, but I think there's kind of a move to get more open source tools available. So I would recommend those.
Yeah, so for me, basically the same answer as Wendy. Knowledge of database is critical. So at Lyft, not only scientists, but even though you're doing operations, even though you're doing marketing, you have to be able to write SQLs in order to pull the data and see what's going on. So I would say that's the number one skill set. And then aside from that, either R, Python, I think the underlying principle is very similar. But I feel like Python is more widely used in the industry. So yeah, if you're new to both and thinking about which one to start, maybe Python would be the choice.
Okay, wonderful. And so next question, as we start to wrap up here, we might have time for just one more, maybe one or two more. But kind of a broad question here. Why did you two decide to become data scientists?
I guess I'll go first because I recently sort of was looking at what's all involved in data science. I looked back over my career and I realized that the degree I got actually was in 1995 in computational sciences and informatics really was what I would call today data science. So I guess I was maybe a data scientist before it became a data scientist discipline. But anyway, so what was the question? Why did I do that?
Yeah, why did you decide to become a data scientist?
Okay, I think it was because of the interdisciplinary nature of it. Because I had my bachelor's was math and physics, so, and then engineering was my master's. So I tended to be kind of interdisciplinary, maybe because I wanted to know a lot of things about a lot of stuff. So that was just of interest to me. So that's how I got into being in that area.
Yeah, so for me, similar story. I studied stats and economics for undergrad, and so I know I wanted to do something analytically related, but I'm not that kind of a technical person that I want to be in front of a computer programming, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I wanted some component of my time to be able to, solve business questions and maybe communicate with different parties. So that's how data science comes in play, because data science is really art and science, and that art part is actually incredibly important. How you can influence business and how your soft skills, like problem solving skills, can be valued. And then the reason I choose Lyft is just a very dynamic, like economic marketplace. It has both supply and demand, and it kind of echoes my undergrad major very well.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Someone said, do you recommend any resources to learn Python or R?
I guess I would say in terms of R, there's so much out there that's just free. So I would just kind of Google it and look for those kind of resources. I would imagine it's the same thing for Python. And even if you go to the CRAN site, so that's the Comprehensive R Archive Network. There's, I think, on the left there's a link that's called user contributed or documentation or something. But anyway, look on there. It's a link on the left at the bottom, and there's a lot of books that are uploaded, courses. So you could just go there and read stuff and learn it.
Yeah, so for Python, there is a book called Python for Data Analysis. There are also a lot of online courses. So I remember there's a MIT open course on like Introduction to Computer Programming, something like that. That's recommended. And for R, my favorite book was the Introduction to Statistical Analysis by Trevor from Stanford. So they not only give you, hands-on step-by-step instructions on R, but also they explain some of the key concepts of machine learning, statistical learning. So it's a very easy to read book, and it's very hands-on, very applicable, that once you read that book, you can start applying the methodology right away. So I would highly recommend that book.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much. We are just about out of time, so we just want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors, the American Statistical Association, the Consortium for the Advancement of Undergraduate Statistics Education, RStudio, Google, and the ASA section on statistical education. So thank you to those sponsors. That is the end of this panel, but for everyone watching, feel free to stick around just a couple of minutes for the closing remarks.